Who would win, 100 men or one gorilla? This question has stirred up quite the debate online as of late, with many simulations popping up and many people chiming in as to how they think one or the other would win. Today, I figured I'd throw my hat in the ring and take a look at this matchup to see who would win between the men and the gorilla, examining different scenarios and strategies along the way. As someone who saw a gorilla at the zoo like 10 or 15 years ago, I think I'm qualified to speak on this subject. The gorilla is our prime focus of this matchup, and is the largest and most powerful primate walking the earth currently, which is why it's important to look over their stats and see just how powerful they really are. An average male gorillas tend to be around 5 feet tall while knuckle walking, and stand around 5 foot 11 inches tall while standing upright, and will typically weigh in at around 350 to 500 pounds. For comparison, the global average for human males is about 5 foot 7 and weighing in between 145 and 175 pounds, depending on the region. So to make it even, let's just say around like 160 pounds per person. And given their sizes, environments, sky-high testosterone, and high muscle composition, gorillas are extremely powerful, said to be about 4 to 10 times stronger than the average human, and are thought to be able to lift up to 2,000 pounds, far more than average males who tend to be able to deadlift about 336 pounds at max. Some estimates even claim that gorillas could potentially bench press over 1,000 pounds and could lift even more, although this number is considered an extreme highball, and typically it is believed that around 1,000 to 150 pounds of force would be a fair estimate to how much they could bench press. Keep in mind, we haven't been able to really test the exact strength of these animals, because it's just really hard to do. But this immense strength can mainly be attributed for their tendency to knuckle walk, with their arms having to carry a large amount of their weight for prolonged periods. These muscles are mainly comprised of fast twitch muscle fibers, which are geared for more powerful and explosive movements for short periods of time. A good showcase of these muscles at work are when gorillas charge at intruders to scare them off, bursting forward at speeds of 25 miles per hour. Humans, on the other hand, possess more slow twitch muscle fibers, which are more geared towards prolonged activities, such as running. This allows the average man to run at about 10 to 15 miles per hour, but for much longer distances than a gorilla. Gorillas are fueled off of a herbivorous diet, sometimes throwing in some bugs and carrion into their diets if necessary for bonus protein, with their main caloric intakes ranging between 4,000 and 8,000 calories a day, well over the typical human male intake of 2,400 or 3,000 calories a day. But due to this diet, which includes tough roots, stems, and bamboo, gorillas have very powerful bite forces, clocking in at a staggering 1,300 psi, or pounds per square inch, far eclipsing our bite force, which for comparison is 160 psi, and even beating out the bite forces of lions and hyenas, which are thought to be around 1,000 psi, give or take. Although it's also important to note that bite force can depend very differently based on the individual to an extreme amount, and also, as said earlier, it's very hard to get an exact estimate as to how hard they can bite. But regardless, all of these bite forces are capable of cracking bone. Gorillas also have much thicker skin and more dense bones than humans, giving them a significant edge in durability on the individual level. And although humans have the edge in intelligence, gorillas are also quite intelligent animals, capable of using tools, possessing high problem-solving skills, having complex social structures, and being one of the very few animals that can communicate with humans. With Coco the gorilla learning sign language to such a point that she could understand over 2,000 words. And on the note of their social structures, it is important to note that gorillas are not inherently aggressive creatures. living in troops consisting of lead silverbacks and multiple female gorillas, along with their children and other males to support the groups. Although males are known to get into fights, they will ultimately separate in order to maintain peace. Gorillas are not brutish monsters like many tend to make them out to be in their own breakdowns on the 100-man question. They are intelligent and peaceful, yet territorial and powerful animals. And in defense of their territory, gorillas have often defeated fearsome creatures such as other gorillas, leopards, and crocodiles. Although due to their size and strength, gorillas are rarely preyed upon. And although human beings have been injured by gorillas in the past, these attacks are scarce and tend to be non-lethal, and were in instances where humans wandered into the gorilla's territory and were mainly done in self-defense. I mean, if you were just minding about your day and some skinny little dude walks into your house and started taking pictures of you and making funny noises around your family, what would you do? Now that we have all of that out of the way, could 100 men beat a gorilla? Well, first we need to set our parameters and go through different scenarios. Firstly, the question mainly asks if 100 unarmed men could defeat a gorilla in an all-out fight to the death. Because if the men were armed, it would not even be worth asking. One very skilled hunter could probably be enough. This also leads us to ask if the men could use improvised weapons. Let's say they are in an area with many rocks or sticks. In this scenario, the men would absolutely be able to pelt the gorilla with rocks and fashion sharp sticks, staffs, and clubs, and would be able to do in the gorilla with minimal casualties. But these scenarios aren't the ones that everyone is mainly talking about. The base conditions are 100 unarmed men, either in an open or an enclosed environment with no weapons whatsoever against the bloodlusted gorilla. Let's just say that we have a soccer stadium for our enclosed environment and just an open field for the open environment. There are two main paths to victory that I have observed people talk about. The first being the swarm method and the other being the exhaustion methods. Many different strategies tend to fall into this line of think. But many people tend to only focus on the abilities of the gorilla in this matchup and forget that the gorilla is facing 100 men at once. One-on-one, the gorilla isn't losing that fight. I don't think many would argue against that. But again, there are 100 men involved in this fight, not just a single one. Assuming the men are all around 160 pounds, give or take, that would put us in at about 16,000 pounds of human mass. Against even a 500-pound peak-condition silverback, there is no way that that gorilla can deal with that much man. The men will be lost and injured in the conflict. Many will be injured. But eventually, the men will overwhelm the gorilla. Men could attack the gorilla in waves, which is ultimately the smarter option for everyone than to attack in a big dog pile. And I found this image on Twitter. I don't know where it originated. I'll try to pull up the source if I can, but I found this on Twitter and I thought it was a pretty good way of how about 30 people at once could take on the gorilla using the swarm method. And because it's 30 people, you could definitely have multiple people switching in and out, replacing the injured men or giving others a break. Several men would have to wrestle down the gorilla at once, while clawing at eyes, twisting at fingers, pinning arms, and the grisliest of all tasks that could, bring in a gorilla, crush the gorilla's coconuts. This tactic can be referred to as leopard style, as it is thought that one of the few ways that leopards will target a gorilla is by going for the cojones. But leopards tend to be very desperate, and this is like there is no other choice. Many try to say things like, oh, a gorilla would swat away at everyone like flies, or say that it would be too strong even for 100 men to fight. But I believe this is a overestimation of the gorilla's abilities and an insane underestimation of what 100 men could do. The gorilla would only be able to deal with one person at a time. It can't just use a Donkey Kong style ground and pound type attack that just sends a shockwave everywhere. I've watched many silverback fights, in captivity mind you, a couple in the wild, where they would get into scuffles with their troops, and it is important to note that against multiple targets, the silverback only tends to go after one gorilla at a time, and will run away when the rest rush to the safety of the other individual. These are ultimately female gorillas and young men in the clips that I saw, and these are typically people that the silverback cares about, not a bunch of bloodthirsty men trying to bring down the gorilla, but you get the point. They struggle with multiple attackers, like all other animals do. This pretty much means that one guy is going to get absolutely demolished immediately. Someone's got to take the dive. But it would greatly struggle when multiple different people go in for the attack. The more time it also spends on that individual, the more time other people get to rush around it and help out that guy on the ground. Many people refer to the gorilla's strength and claim that it's impossible to pin down a gorilla. However, men throughout history have wrestled with brown bears, animals far heavier, stronger, and larger than gorillas. And although the bear is often declawed, muzzled, or trained not to harm the wrestler, and it is ultimately playing, it still helps shut down the idea that a human would just be disintegrated under the power of the gorilla. And these are often one really strong guy, not 100 average strength guys. Additionally, even if the gorilla was strong enough to fling people away and crush skulls with ease, the gorilla would tire quickly. Eventually, the fast-twitch muscle fibers in the gorilla would tire, leading to a grand drop-off in strength while fresh men join the fray. And on the note of gassing out, it is important to look at the second main line of logic, which would probably be the most successful, and that would be a form of the endurance method, which I would just call the most stressful game attack ever. Basically, the men would do their best to avoid the gorilla's charges until it would tire out, with some men probably getting caught, as the gorilla would charge quicker than the men could run away, so it would get somebody. But this could also help the collective, as the gorilla would probably mindlessly slam the individual and throw them about as the gorilla's bloodlusted, and this would cause it to tire quicker and quicker, and then eventually everyone would jump in and do the gorilla in, and hopefully give that poor soul a burial. This strategy would be the best in an open space, with plenty of room to flee, as it also assumes that there would be no time limit. Many have also tried to claim that many men would simply lose the will to fight against the gorilla, but if that's true, then you'd have to acknowledge the fact that the gorilla would realistically not even try to engage with the men. Gorillas are more peaceful than we tend to be, man. They're just kind of chilling out in the mountains half the time. So if you had to take into account that the men wouldn't be bloodlusted, then the gorilla can't be either. You'd have to consider that the gorilla would try to flee from the scene, causing the men to tail it until it would collapse from exhaustion. This method is actually a real form of hunting that is used, known as persistent hunting, where people or animals would tend to run something down until it collapses with exhaustion. And humans just tend to be some of the best hunters in this method. The only scenario that I would see these men losing is if they all attacked it a single man at a time. But even then, there is a risk that the gorilla goes overboard and gasses out by absolutely pummeling one dude, and eventually it'll collapse from exhaustion. But after all, I feel it's very important to note that this is 100 men. I can't stress it up. It's 100 men all at once. You take 100 men, I bet not. In conclusion, 100 men would just be far too much for the gorilla to defeat. Even if the men were unarmed, it would be brutal, and men would perish in the effort, but in the end, man will prevail. Many tend to focus on how the men would even damage the gorilla in the first place. And even though there are methods you could, they all seemingly also forgot that, like other creatures, gorillas would tire out. And due to how much muscle they have and how little slow twitch fibers their bodies are composed of, they don't have that big of a gas tank, and eventually it would collapse from fatigue. If you wanted me to rank the different methods, I think the evasion method would be very good, especially in an open environment, and even in an enclosed environment, I think the evasion method would work well. There would also be a method where everyone just runs it down. I think that's realistic, but if the gorilla's bloodlusted, that wouldn't really be feasible. Then I would say the more disciplined swarm, we'll call it the disciplined swarm, with about 30 people at once with backup surrounding, would be the next most efficient. Then the grand swarm would be a very inefficient method, but it would still kill the gorilla. Ultimately, though, that is very dangerous because people would probably end up getting crushed by other people in the scenario. And then the method with the least chance of victory would be 1v1 with, again, a tournament style, like you're up next kind of method of taking on the gorilla. But even in that one-on-one, I feel eventually the gorilla would tire, unless the gorilla has time to rest, in which case then, yeah, everyone's screwed. But thankfully, gorilla attacks on humans are very rare, and this is mainly due to them being gentle giants. In the end of the day, they don't want to attack people. We can coexist peacefully. Man and gorilla were made to be friends. And, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for the grand debate of the gorilla versus 100 men. It's good to be back. If this is one of your first videos watching me, I don't typically cover videos like this, matchups like this. I mainly do cryptid style content and whatever I really feel like sometimes, but if you really want me to cover more matchups like this, or if you have any other matchup questions like this, let me know, because I kind of like this. I would like to cover other matchups in the future. I think that'd be really cool. Like, this probably would have been more fair if it was 100 men versus 10 gorillas. But what'd y'all think about it? I just couldn't stop thinking about this, and I was like, you know what? I was working on a video, but I'll put that to the side for a little bit, and I'll do this one. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure to leave a comment down below what you thought about the video. What did you think about the matchup? How am I wrong in any of these scenarios? Maybe you think that the gorilla would absolutely demolish the men. I don't think so. But let me know down below. If you liked the video, liked it. If you like the content, make sure to watch some more videos and subscribe. And I will see you all in the next one, which hopefully will be later this week. But goodbye.